Get it started.
All right,
All right.
beautiful.
Okay, so just to give a little bit of background, and again, I don't want this to be treated as a live stream. This is just a normal Zoom meeting that we'd be having either way.
Yep.
So I don't want us to get off character or try to impersonate people that we're not really in real life. Just to bring Jennifer into the loop as to how we came up with having this Zoom meeting to begin with and how the conversation started to begin with is we're starting to see that trend of more and more people trying to get into investments and then they end up either hurting themselves because they're becoming experts to TikTok, right? And even I called you, I messaged you a TikTok video and I'm like, hey, how legit is this? Because you always have these guys on TikTok that they're like, hey, did you know that with $0 and with zero this and with zero proof of income and with zero money in the bank, you can go start up your real estate business today and make $1 million a year, right? And so it's only fair that people also understand that the way that they're making their profit is by their views, right? People are sharing that video. They're like, hey, did you know about this? So ultimately, if they're doing so well off in that business, they wouldn't take their time sharing it on TikTok, or maybe some people are nice enough to share those secrets with everybody. But mainly my concern was that I was getting misled myself with some of the things that I was seeing on TikTok. And surely I talked to you about my background in the car industry. Towards the end, I would also see it when people would walk into the finance office like, no, the guy on TikTok told me that I don't have to pay for those fees. No, the guy on TikTok said that this fee is not true. And it's like, man, I mean, unfortunately, the guy from TikTok's not selling cars, right? And you can't go buy a car with them, and they get misled. Like they told me not to buy this extended warranty. Well, the guy from TikTok is not gonna pay for your transmission whenever it goes out, right?
Right. People getting misled in the auto industry? No way.
Yeah, I mean, no, not only misled, they show up, and this is not to make fun of everybody. We all fall victims of the TikTok. And some things work. I fixed my dryer through TikTok. I found
Oh,
how to
totally.
replace the band, and some of the things are on real estate are true. Some of the things on buying cars are true. Some of the things are not true, unfortunately, and that's what's leading people to either lose their money, lose what they have, because they make it sound like it's so simple when it's really not the case, right? So that's why you're here. That's why I've also invited my mentor. His name's Ray Gonzales. He's on the screen. He has multiple properties that he's currently invested in. So I wanted to bring in the people from the outside world into the conversations that we have privately and give them an understanding of how investment really works, what type of investment loans there are, what are the requirements, and is it really as beautiful as TikTok makes it sound? So
Love it.
now carry on, Alex. I can shut up.
Well, guys, so I'll introduce myself. So my name's Alex Luzadre. I've been a mortgage broker for 8 years, better part of a decade going on now. Real estate investor. Let's see, I actually pulled the trigger 3 years ago, but there was a good 3 years prior to that where I was just soaking up as much information as I could. I'm not one to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. So I've heard a lot of investors, listen to a lot of bigger pockets where people jumped in, didn't know what they're doing, and lost a lot of money, and did not want that to be me, right? So I'd rather take my time, slow and steady, make a couple really good moves, and that's exactly what I did. So that being said, there's a lot of people putting a lot of stuff out there on TikTok, and what you sent me was in reference to the BRRRR strategy, right? You buy, you repair the property, you rent it out, you refinance it to pull all your money back out, or what you can, and then you repeat the process, right? Which I'd say 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have some money into those deals, right? You're not going to pull all of it out every single time and execute a perfect BRRRR. I mean, that's the dream, right? And if you do enough of them, I'm sure you could execute on that. Or, maybe you're not refinancing exactly in 6 months to get all your money out. Maybe it's 6 months, and then again, a couple of years down the line when you've got enough appreciation to be able to pull that capital out. So it might not be as clean as it might be made to seem online. But there are a lot of people out there putting out some great content. Some of those people, you can't speak to their resumes and what they've done in the past, but there's a lot of people that have done it and done it at a high level that are putting that content out there to help and see other people succeed. And I would say that the motivational stuff, like, hey, you can jump in here, no experience, you can jump in, just go balls to the wall and make $1 million a year. That's the stuff that's going to get the clicks and actually get people off the couch in some cases, right? Whereas if they pitch it as, hey, you can get started in real estate and you're gonna grind. It's gonna be an 80-hour work week for a couple of years. Most people you're not gonna get the same level of engagement, right, with your content as you would hey, you come in and make $1 million in a year straight out the gates, right? But that said, there's ways to do it. There's people that do it. A lot of times those people have a lot of other experience in other areas, be it real estate, or they've worked at a high level in other careers and other businesses, and then they translate that level of knowledge and expertise into real estate, and that's the people that come out the gates, like they already know how to operate at a high level and at a high clip, right? Not to say that it can't be done, but if you've been working, as a base level employee, and you don't know how to operate and run a business, then obviously you're going to have a lot bigger learning curve than the guy that's operated multiple businesses, had 10, 20, 50 employees in another area, and translated that knowledge and experience within the real estate game. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Ray, you wanna give us a little of input of what's going on with your life right now? I know that you have tons of experience with this conversation or this topic in general. So you want to tell Alex who you are and kind of what you do?
Sure. How you doing, Alex?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, my name's Ray Gonzales, and I'm a licensed real estate license holder. I don't. I mentor with Epic Realty, which is the part of the brokerage that Santiago and I are both a part of. And before I was with Epic, I was a full-time real estate investor, and I'm still a full-time real estate investor. I've been doing wholesale and flipping houses and buying rentals and all of that good stuff for the better part of 10 years now. And, when I first got started, I got started in the wholesale game. And from there, I got my bearings, and I learned how to do wholesale, and I learned how to do traditional real estate. And over the years, I've just kind of branched off, and I've come to the realization that most people get involved either in mortgage lending or in real estate in general, because they want to accumulate a certain amount of success and wealth over their career. And so that really attracted me to the real estate investing part of stuff. As far as the topic today for BRRRRs, I'm on BRRRR number 4 now.
Nice.
And so I know a thing or two about them. I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert, but over the past 2.5 or 3 years, I've started building a little portfolio for myself in the single family arena. That's where I specialize. That's where I feel the most confident in executing these types of strategies, just because all of my prior experience was in the single family home stuff. And there's a lot of folks out there right now that are saying, hey, you could BRRRR anything, you can wholesale anything, you can do commercial, you can do industrial, you can do all kinds of stuff, and they'll lend on it. And there's different types of loans that'll work for these different types of strategies. And to that, I say, great, sure. I'm not going to do it. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. It's just in my experience over the time that I've been doing real estate, I like to develop systems, develop a plan, and execute on that plan. And if it works, then repeat it. And if it works, then repeat it again and repeat it again until it becomes systemic and the actions become boring. You know, you want to do it over and over again until your actions, it just becomes like muscle memory to you.
100%.
And so my first house that I turned into a BRRRR was actually in 2019, right before the pandemic. And you know, I ended up doing a refinance on it. It worked out. I still hold the property. And in 2020, during the pandemic, I did another BRRRR, and it's the one that I like to talk about the most. It's my favorite one that I like to talk about. It's the reason I like to talk about it the most is because it's the most real. I experienced the most heartache with it. I experienced the most loss with it. You know, I experienced the true real estate roller coaster with it. Um, during the process, I got it at a steal of a deal, and I'll kind of talk about it backwards. Uh, you know, I bought this property at 110 private money, so it didn't actually cost me money out of my own pocket. Now, can you do real estate with no money out of pocket? I just want to just deviate and talk about that. Can you? Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. Should you? No. You should have it just, if you say it out loud, the more that you say it out loud, the more it doesn't make sense. Should you real estate invest with no money? See how silly that sounds when you say it out loud?
You know,
So,
I think it
you
depends
know,
on your risk tolerance, personally. You know, I mean, to me, I wouldn't, right? The more skin I have in the game, the less the less pressure in that sense, right? Like I feel enough pressure if I've got a hard money loan, or if I just have a loan and then I'm putting money into a rehab project, right?
right.
But if
Yeah.
I've got, you know, not only those loans, but then a private lender who's lending me the down payment money or the rehab money. Now, dude, that's a lot of balls to juggle. That's, you know, if something does go wrong, there's very little to no margin for error.
But that, and that's exactly my point. You're right, Alex. So in those scenarios, and again, in real estate investing, and I also do stocks. So I have to look at the possibility, but more importantly, you have to look at the probability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the probability of all the stars aligning and you not needing any money to get a project done, and you know, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. And so, can you do real estate investing with no money out of pocket? Yes, you can. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable that everything's going to line up right for you? No. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, Ray, I mean, how many of the 4 BRRRR projects that you've done and all the flips and projects that you've done over the last 10 years, how many of them worked out exactly to plan?
One.
Yeah, exactly.
One.
You
You
got a
know,
plan for stuff just not going correctly. And if you're not planning for that, you're planning for failure.
absolutely. So this house that I did was in Converse, Texas, which for those that don't know, it's a suburb of San Antonio. And I did it with a business partner of mine. Great dude. We you know, we took it on, and it was just right in the middle of the pandemic when the deal closed. And it was, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was when everything froze up, the financial markets froze up, everybody stopped lending, everybody was very like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen next. And you know, some of the funding that I had secured disappeared on me because of that. So I came out of pocket, you know, like about 40 grand, which cool, you know, we made it happen. And then one of the contractors got COVID. He got sick. He was out of it. The next contractor that we got to come in screwed us. He kind of ran off with some of the money and didn't finish the project. And it was every excuse under the sun on why he didn't come. You know, and then what ended up happening is I was like, well, you know what? If I have to roll my sleeves up and go in there and start installing the floors myself to get this done because I'm on a time crunch with this loan and I need to get it refinanced and pull my money back out, et cetera, et cetera. That's what ended up happening. And for anybody that knows real estate investing, that's exactly what you don't do unless you absolutely have to. And it was one of those situations where I absolutely had to. I couldn't wait on people anymore. I couldn't wait on the contractor to get better. I couldn't wait on the money. I had to go in there and start knocking things out myself. So we did. The project took way longer than we anticipated. We ended up spending a lot more money than we initially anticipated, but we got the house done. We got it rented. I did do the refinance. We got that done. I got the majority of our money pulled back out of the deal. So we got that done. And, 2.5 years later, I'm sitting with the property that's cash flowing a very nice amount. My mortgage on it's about $1,100. We got it rented for $1,800 right now.
Nice.
It's freshly remodeled within the last couple of years. So, we haven't really had to do much maintenance on it, which is another really good thing. And it's appreciated about $100K in value over that time.
That's a beautiful part.
It's one of those things where if you stick to the plan and you execute it and you make sure that you can stomach all of the losses and all of the obstacles that come with it, then you will see success. I've seen very few people get into this business in whatever capacity they're doing it in and not go full all in and not be successful. It will take time. You will suffer loss. You will suffer heartache, but you will become calloused and it'll become just part of the business. And that's what's happened to me over time is if a deal falls apart or things don't go to plan, and Santiago can vouch for this, it's only real estate, man.
That's it, man. It's just money.
It's only real estate. It's not the end of the world. Don't do anything drastic. You'll be fine. But you have to learn from people that are smarter than you. You have to get some experience under your belt, and you have to be willing to stomach loss and go for it. And if you can do those, you'll be successful in business.
It's like they say, time in the market is more important than timing the market, right? And then the other phrase that I really love is real estate very rarely works out in the short term, but almost always works out in the long term, right? So if you're in it for the long game, and you see that 100K appreciation, does it really matter that you had to pay in an extra 20, 40 grand, right? Like you made your money back on the back end, and in 10 years from now, it's water under the bridge, man. It was just one thing that you had to do to get there. Question I do have for you though, is that being a wholesaler flipper, I see a lot of guys that get into the business because it's a low barrier to entry to wholesale, right? Mm-hmm. Flipping takes it to another level. But then, in my opinion, those are just additional hamster wheels. And what I mean by that is, in the loan business and in real estate, you have to continually have that pipeline churning in order to make money, right? So you're on that wheel. It's no different in wholesaling and flipping. The second you stop working, so the money stops coming in. So what was it about, what clicked in your mind to where you were like, I gotta make this transition from wholesale flip to buy and hold?
Great question. I think what really did it for me, and it takes time. Everybody's gonna do it on a different time frame. They're gonna see the light at different times in their life and in their career. But for me, it happened about 4 years ago, somewhere in there, where I was doing these remodels and primarily wholesaling, but I was doing these remodels, and I just started realizing that I'm putting all this work into these houses. I'm fixing them up. I'm making them look nice. And then I'm selling them and I'm making a profit. And that's it. I got paid once. It didn't, after it's done, it's like, man, I went through hell for 6 months and I made one lump sum of money and it's cool. But when you start looking at it in terms of, if I'm going to buy it and I'm going to fix it, I need to figure out how to hold it. And that's the little thing that clicked with me, is just using that rule of thumb. If you're going to start fixing it, figure out how to hold it. And that's what I've been doing. I started fixing them. I started figuring out how to hold them. And I also have come to the realization that when you're going to do a burst strategy, a lot of the problems that you encounter doing a flip, you don't necessarily see on the buy and hold side per se. There's a different set of problems, but you know, when you're flipping a property, you know, you got to go to the city, you got to go pull your permits. You know, you gotta really dive deep into all of the mechanicals of the property, the foundation, the HVAC, the roof, you know, the electrical, the plumbing. And when you're doing a BRRRR, I'm not saying that you're not going to have to address those issues. You absolutely will. But what I am saying is that the amount of overall work that you have to put into that house doesn't have to be flip quality. It can, you can still put a good amount of work into a house, make it look nice, make sure that it functions mechanically, but you don't have to put the 80 grand that you would into a flip.
All the bells and whistles.
You don't have to do that. You know, even the finish out items don't have to be the same as if you're doing a flip, because you know that it's going to see wear and tear. You know that you're going to hold it for 5 years plus. You know, you understand all of these things going in. So being able to you know, navigate the difference between doing a full remodel compared to doing just a remodel or a make ready, as we call it, doing a make ready for tenants, it's quite a bit cheaper over the long haul. And if you do it right, the house will still appraise for the amount that you need it to get to. You know, you just got to do it right. And in a flip, let's say that there's like a little slope in the foundation, you know, that's an issue, because this could be somebody's forever home, and they see that little dip in the foundation, and you know, that sets off red flags for them, and they're worried about it. And you know, and hey, we had an inspection done on it. The inspection came back, you know, it's two degrees out of tolerance, and now you have to go get that fixed. And you know, it becomes, are we going to give them a concession? Are we going to give them some kind of discount on it, et cetera, et cetera? When you're doing a BRRRR, when you're doing something that you're going to buy and hold, if there's a little dip in the floor, that's okay. The appraiser, unless it's something that's just god awful. I mean, it's just something that's like blatantly obvious. There is some structural issue going on with the property. If there's a small dip in the floor, or there's other little minor imperfections, that's probably not going to get red flagged by the appraiser, because it's still, the appraiser is still going to show that the value of the property is still there. So that's another one of the big differences between doing a flip and doing a buy and hold, and why I like them better.
I agree with that. You know, and to clarify, in my opinion, it's still an issue, right? It's not like the issue goes away.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more
For
so
sure.
like the time frame with which it is an issue, right? It's like
Yes.
that little slope in the floor. It's not going to be an issue now, because I'm just going to get a tenant in there. But if I go to sell the property in 5 years, it ain't like the problem's going to go away in 5 years, right?
Right.
So in my opinion, what I've done is like I try to get it up out in front of every single issue I possibly can up front, just so it diminishes the amount of issues I have along the way. And some of those, right, just kind of, it's not that big of a deal. You can gloss over it and deal with it down the road. But others, right, if it's a foundational issue that might lead to other structural, like a lack of structural integrity and failings, right, while I'm holding it or afterwards, then you might want to address that, just so that, you know, you don't have a tenant calling you up, be like, dude, the wall just collapsed. Like,
yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with that. And I look at it like this: in 5 years, I'm going to have to remodel the whole property anyway. In you know what I mean, between wear and tear and other mechanical devices failing over the 5 years that you're going to rent it out or whatever, you're gonna address all of that again, you know. So if there's minor things going on, you know, yes, get in front of it the best that you can, but just understand that it's not going to be an absolute deal breaker like it would be with a flip.
Correct.
You know, if any of those little things go wrong with the flip, it turns into a deal breaker, you know, because you're selling it at retail. You're on the retail market at that point, and everything has to look great. But if you're holding it, you know, you can be a little more laxed about where you're spending the money overall, you know. And again, it doesn't necessarily hurt the overall value of the property. But I agree, if there's a major issue going on, and it's not just a small slope in the foundation, if there's something structural going on, there's separation, there's a major issue, address it. yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely address
Absolutely.
it, you know.
And it also depends on your exit strategy too. Like, are we long-term renting? Are we mid-term? Are we short-term? Right. So like if you're trying to do a short-term rental in a luxury market, you might have to you might not be able to skimp on those renovations, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
now it's not a tenant, it's a guest. And
Yeah.
if I don't want to stay there, right, why would I expect anybody else to? And especially if there's hotels in the area, why are they going to pick my Airbnb versus a hotel? Especially if I'm, going on second rate or third rate upgrades and skimping on things. It's like, man, I got to make sure this place is dialed in. Because,
Yep.
I had this come up with I had a furnace that was about 20 years old on a property. And the guy was like, it's got about maybe a couple years left. These things are built to last about 20 years, might not be an issue. And I'm like, replace it, put in an AC unit at the same time. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, dude, what happens when this thing goes out in the middle of winter and I got a guest in there for a couple weeks or for a month? Like, now what? I got to bring in space heaters, like hope they still give me a good review. And
Yeah.
then, how long is it going to take me then to get that heater in there and that new furnace at that point? And I have to
It
block
just
it off and stop bookings. Like,
Yeah, it just ruined the guest experience. And that's another really good point that you brought up, is not just being able to buy and hold, but what business are you actually getting into? Because those are two totally different businesses.
mm-hmm.
Short-term rental game compared to putting a tenant in a property for a year or two are a world apart. They are
Oh
a
yeah.
world different. I actually had again, this is right when COVID hit, so I had to sell it, so I didn't lose my butt. But I actually bought a duplex downtown San Antonio, and it was a great spot right off of Broadway, and I was going to turn it into a short-term rental. It was going to be my first one. But it hit smack dab right when COVID hit. Everything stopped, and I fire sold it just to get out of it, But that would have been my first experience with the short-term rental. The only other closest thing that I've ever come to doing that was I tried a strategy out for about a year and a half where I was renting one of my rental properties out room by room. It was a freshly remodeled place. I made a ton more money doing that, but it was a lot more work.
Oh yeah.
And at this point in my career, I'm about the path of least resistance. So I actually like old school, just put a tenant in there for a year, let them sign a lease, let them pay the light, let them pay the electricity, let them pay their own internet. I collect the rent, the place appreciates. As long as they don't tear it up, I'm looking good.
It's
So
stable.
it's been working for me, and that's what I'm sticking with.
There's no free lunch, Ray.
Yeah.
You want to make that
So
extra
now,
buck.
don't mean to interrupt, but now this is my as you guys were talking about the rentals, the short term, the long term, the benefits, the unbenefits. I get some calls from people that are like, I'm looking, can you send me some flip houses? But they're not seeing it in the sense of putting a renter in there. They're seeing it as a sense of something that I can renovate, flip, and make money out of it. Why would you be against that method of investment where there's no renter involved, no holding involved? What are the benefits? What are the non-benefits? And or the risk much higher? I would think, in my uneducated mind, that there's bigger risk, and the reason is because now you're invested into the property, you're invested into the immediate renovation to getting it up to par because you're in a seller market now, like Ray mentioned right now. You are hiring contractors, third parties also, and you might be in a hard money loan for the next 4 or 5 months where you're also invested into the interest that you've paid so far on that hard money loan. What's the smart approach to that? Because that's another thing that comes up. People think that they're gonna buy something and make $100,000 in 2 months out of it. Is that true? What's the tax on that flip, on that profit within the year? And what are the cons for that approach where you're not holding or renting?
I would take this, Ray. So I would say there's no wrong strategy, right? Like, there's no wrong answer in this equation. It really depends on what is your target, right? Are you trying to make a bunch of money right now and you need now money, right? Or is now money okay and you want to target forever money, right? Where I need to build up my portfolio. I want to build up my, I hate the word passive income, because even long-term rentals are not truly passive, right? You're doing some work here and there. Maybe it might be an hour a month, but it's still work, right? But it just depends on what your end goal is. So if you've got now money coming in, you've got your reserves, and you've got those boxes checked, then it might make more sense to take a look at, let's get into this property, let's keep it long term as a rental, and keep that money flowing. The way I would look at that is, how much can I make at the exit, right, after taxes, which you had mentioned. If I'm no CPA, so verify this with your tax person, right? I got to give that little disclaimer anytime I'm talking taxes, even though I probably know, and again, take with a little asterisk on the statement, but I probably know a little bit more about taxes than most CPAs, I would say, at this point. You are going to pay short-term capital gains tax on anything that you hold for less than a year, which is, last I checked, about 40% maximum, depending on what tax bracket you're in, okay? So if you hold it for more than a year, then you're looking at 20%. Again, depends on your tax bracket, but I believe the worst case scenario is 20% there. So that being said, like, what is my end profit at the end of this flip? And as far as like your hard money cost, that would be a part of your holding costs that you would build in to, your overall budget, right? What's my cost to acquire this? What's my percentage down with the hard money lender? That might be, there's some that are at 0, but their interest rates are crazy. So it might be as little as 10, 15, 20% for the hard money loan. What's my cost to, that should build in your renovation budget, right? But what if I go over my budget? Let me give some percentage to that. What's my interest that I'm going to pay on that hold money loan over 3, 4, 6 months? Sorry, got a little intrusion. Hey, sweetheart, I'm on a call. Go on. Then you might have some contingencies in there. You might have some other things, and I don't have a checklist in front of me, so I'm probably forgetting a few things there. But you build that all in, and then you say, okay, what's the projected ARV, after repair value, right? There's my margin that I can sell it for, and then based upon what I purchased and what I'm selling it for, that's my cost basis versus the ARV. That's what I'm going to pay tax on. Okay, so then I could take the 40% of that if it's short term, in fact, back that out and see what my total profit is after tax. Now, if that's, let's say that's $10,000, okay, and I stand to make, let's just use easy math here, so like $80 a month in total cash flow after I account for property management, vacancy, and CapEx. That's about $1,000 a year, give or take a couple dollars here, right? Or I could make $10,000 right now. Personally, I'd rather take the $10,000 because that's 10 years of cash flow right now. If it was, maybe there's a potential for $5,000 a year in total cash flow. At that point, I would take the cash flow. I'd hold it, right? Because in 2 years, I'm going to make all that money that I would have made right now. And I'm probably going to hold this property for a minimum 5 to 7 years, right? So there's some strategy that goes into it with the numbers, but again, that's my personal preference, and everybody's got a different game plan, right? The guy with 100 rentals has a different plan than the guy that is just starting to get his first one and trying to get his feet under him.
Exactly. There's a lot of different variables, and just to piggyback off of what Alex is saying, there's no wrong answer in this equation, but what it's basically coming down to is, where are you at in your real estate career? Are you the guy that's just starting out, or are you the guy that already has a full portfolio built out? Where are you at capital wise? And even more importantly than the both of them, I think, is where are you at in your mindset? What is the target that you're trying to hit? Again, I've dabbled in a little bit of all of the real estate, whether it wholesale, flip, buy and hold, etc. And I'm a little bit I'm in my 40s now, and my mindset is different than it was in my early 30s. In my early 30s, flip some properties. You know, I was more gun-ho about it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was cool. You know, I'm a bit older now. I'm in my 40s, and I enjoy the monthly income of the properties that the monthly income that the properties are generating. Would I have thought like this 10 years ago? Probably not. You know, but as you mature and as you become more knowledgeable in your realm, you start really finding your groove. So to sum it up, there is not a wrong answer. There's always going to be pros and cons to every strategy, whether it's going to be a fix and flip or a buy and hold or a short-term rental or a wholesale, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be pros and cons to all of them. And what I'd recommend doing, especially if you're just starting out, is getting with professionals that are around you and see what they do and figure out how to get around the people that are doing what you want to do. So if you want to learn how to wholesale, go be around wholesalers. If you want to learn about fixing and flipping, go be around fix and flippers. And always you know, get an unbiased realtor that can give you their professional opinion about what the market's doing, about what they see an ARV being as, about what they you know, are looking at as far as repair costs are concerned. Not all realtors are built the same, just the same way that not all mortgage lenders are built the same. You know, there's different experience levels. So really it's going to come down to what kind of team can you build, what kind of cash do you have on hand, what kind of cash do you have access to, and that's also going to help mold what kind of strategy you can execute. You know, some of these flippers that have full crews, that have somebody that does everything, you know, they have a whole team of electricians, a whole team of roofers, they have structural engineers, they have foundation people, they have HVAC folks, they already have these teams built out, you know, that because that's their strategy to fix and flip properties. So it makes sense for them to get an off-market property from a wholesaler, buy it at a discount, you know, put the 80 grand into it, be in the whole thing for 6 months and sell it, because they already have that. They systemically, they already have all of that built out, and that pipeline is just all of the processes are going to go down that pipeline, and at the end they're going to turn out a good product because they already have everything built. Whereas somebody who's getting into the game to begin with, they may not have access to all those different resources. They may not have access and those relationships built with all those contractors yet. So they're going to stumble and fumble, you know. But again, it just comes down to mindset, what you have access to, and there is no wrong answer. It really just depends on what you're shooting for.
Absolutely. You know, and there's something that you had said, Ray, about you know, earlier your mindset was all about flipping, and I'm assuming that, you know, wanting to make as much money as you possibly could in a short amount of time, right? And I know I was there when I first got into the mortgage game, seeing my buddies' paychecks and looking at those end of year W-2s and be like, that's where I want to be, right? And then January rolls around the following year, and you're like, oh shit, I'm at zero again, and you're on that treadmill. Right. And so that was what clicked with me early on, and why I never went down the path of, you know, hey, I want to make as much money as I possibly can right now, was, you know, I saw the hedonic treadmill and where that goes. And I was like, I just want to sidestep that immediately. And I always gravitated towards the clients that were, you know, in their 70s, 80s with 40 properties paid off free and clear, that are like, dude, I don't care about depreciation and flipping this property in order to get this one. And they're like, dude, I'm not worried about a damn thing. Like, I got $1 million in the bank. I got 40 properties paying me 30 grand a month. Like, what problem? You know, it's like, okay, that's where I want to be. What is this guy looking at? How does he assess things? Right. And let me just copy paste.
Exactly. And the good thing is, Alex, about being around people like that, because I know a couple of people like that too, that I aspire to be like, you know, when I'm in my 60s and 70s and stuff, is you get to see the end result, and your learning curve is exponentially cut.
Oh, 100%.
And that's really a life hack right there, man. You know, if you can get around the right people and be mentored by the people, and everybody needs mentorship, and everybody that's in the game, even if they're a mentor or not, they are being mentored by somebody else higher up on the pyramid. It's a trickle down effect. Everybody's being mentored by somebody else, and it's about being able to recognize the value that people bring to you, and more importantly, it's about being able to provide value to others, and that's why they'd want to share the wealth of knowledge that they have with you. And it could be anything. It could be, hey, I can help you on the weekends. It can be, I can run analysis for you at no cost. I can help you find properties, whatever the case may be. I've always said that real estate is a marketing and a relationship business, you know.
1,000%.
And if I always tell my mentees, what are you marketing? You're marketing yourself. You're marketing your services, but you're really marketing yourself to the world. And you're saying, hey, I'm Santiago, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I work, and then what are you doing with relationships? Well, you're building relationships with anybody that can bring value to you, and anybody that you can bring value to. And I always concentrate on the second one more. If I can bring more value, then I know that I'm doing something right. If I can continue to bring value to the market, the market and the universe and it as a whole will reciprocate that to me, and it's just going to amplify more. It's going to tenfold. It's going to 10x.
Go back to mindset, right?
Exactly. So that's why I feel good about taking agents that have been in the game 6 months to 2 years and saying, hey, this is actually the hardest part of your career right here, is getting through this first couple of years. Because if you can make it through that, you've just made it through a gauntlet that like 90% of new agents can't get through,
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, and it's also like, I'd use this goes with anything, right? But fast forward, you've been in the game 10 years, and you look at some people that have been in it the same amount of time as you, right? And it's like, do you have 10 years of experience, or do you have the last 6 months of it, or the first 6 months repeated 20 times?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you leveling up? Are you continuing to learn? Are you continuing to seek mentorship and grow? Or are you just like stuck on level one and you're just repeating the entire process over and over again? It's like, at some point you got to learn the lesson and progress. And in my opinion, sometimes that gets easier. A lot of times it gets harder, right? Like, people always, like, oh, I can't wait to get to this stage. And then, it's like the problem is gone, right? It's like, yeah, that you might have solved that problem, but what you really did was level up to bigger, better problems.
Yeah, a different kind of problem. And that's a very interesting point that you bring up, Alex. I equate what you're saying back to something as fundamental as money management, right?
100%.
Because people say, man, like, I'm here, and then the comparison is the thief of all, right? You start comparing, it's like the thief of happiness. But it's in our nature to compare. So when you start comparing somebody who's making 30 grand a year to the dude that's making 80 grand a year, and then you compare the dude that's making 80 grand a year to the guy that's making 150 grand a year, and so on and so forth, what happens is the guy that's making 30 grand a year says, man, I want to be making that 80K, but can you manage that?
Right.
You see, because you may not be ready for the blessings, and that's how come they don't come to you prematurely. The blessings come to you when they're supposed to come to you. And if you're the guy that's making the 30K saying, man, I want to make the 80K, well, if you mismanage your 30K, you're not going to be able to handle the 80K. If you mismanage your 80K, you're not going to be able to handle the 150. If you can't handle a $100,000 account, what makes you think you can handle a $200,000 account? And if you can't handle a $200,000 account, what makes you think you can handle a $2 million account?
You can't. Yeah. How many lottery winners go bust within a year?
Exactly.
It's too much potential energy. They don't know what to do with it, where for it to go, right? One of my favorite phrases is that a foolish man seeks happiness in the distance, while the wise grows it under his feet, right? It's like, nice. If you don't know how to manage what you have, right? If you don't know what to do with $1,000, you sure as hell ain't going to know what to do with 100,000 or 1 million, right? Money only solves, and to that effect, like money only solves money problems. So it's like to think that all your problems are just going to all of a sudden dissipate because you have all this money. Like, dude, it's not the way life works, unfortunately.
It can make things easier. It can make things more comfortable in a certain aspect, you know, but I think Steve Harvey said it. He said money amplifies who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are, you know, an a-hole, money is going to amplify that and accentuate that, right? But if you're a good person and you do good things, money is going to allow you to do good things, you know. And I've always looked at money in my career as a tool. It almost isn't real. And what I mean when I say that is you're gonna have money, you're gonna have large sums of money. And if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you're gonna be down, and then you're gonna be up, and then you're gonna be down. And what it means is when you have the money, if you use it as a tool and you invest that money uh, into something else, and that's why you're going to be low on money, because you're investing it in something else. That investment is going to pay you tenfold, and then guess what? You're going to be up again, and then you're going to take that money, use it as a tool, make another investment.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be down, and then it makes it go up. What you don't want to do is use money as a solve all or a fix all and say, hey, money is going to solve all of my problems and everything bad that's happening in my life is going to go away because now I hit the lottery. No,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen. You know, if you use money properly and you invest it and you use it as a tool, it's just like a hammer. You know, you find a nail, you hammer it down, boom, next hammer, next nail, hammer it down, et cetera, et cetera. That's money. It's just a tool to help you build wealth.
Oh,
And,
that's a
you
really
know,
good point.
yeah, it's just a tool.
It brings up a phrase that I've heard. Do you guys listen to Bigger Pockets,
Yes.
Brandon Turner and them? So one of the things that he said so frequently was that to the man with a hammer, to the man with a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So it's like to the wholesaler, he's seeing every house as a potential to wholesale. To the
Yeah.
flipper, every house is a potential to flip.
Yeah. Every deal's a good deal. It's
There's a deal out there with everything, man.
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
make it
yeah.
happen. One of the things I try to encourage anybody that's new into real estate is to learn multiple exit strategies and to take every potential opportunity and put it through multiple lenses, right? So there was an old school guy, I can't remember his name, but his philosophy was that, you know, if real estate agents, they're the boots on the ground, right? They're out there talking to people, they're seeing the properties. If they learned these different lenses, most of them could retire within 3 years. And to what degree retirement, you know, depends on your goals, right? But it was, you know, let's say you find a distressed property, okay, it's potential wholesale deal, or maybe it was brought to you by a wholesaler, right?
Sure.
His thing was if you could renovate that property, rent it out, and at the end of it, you know, do a refi and still have 30% equity margin, which is a pretty, you know, thick margin. Cash out refis allow you to go up to 80%, right? So if he could have 30% equity left in the deal, he keeps it as a long-term rental. Okay. If it doesn't check that box, if it's less than 70, so between like 70 and 80, he would flip it, right? Take that amount of money and just stack capital, go into the next deal, whatever. If there wasn't enough money in it to flip it, he would wholesale it. You know, and you can daisy chain wholesales, right? And just make sure it's okay with the person that you're taking on the wholesale deal from. To those that don't know what I mean by daisy chaining, so if a wholesaler brings you a deal and there's a lot of meat on that bone still, then you could turn around, find an end buyer for it, and assign that deal yourself. And now there's 2 assigned contracts, right? So it's daisy chaining. And then after all that, so if there wasn't enough money for him to even wholesale it, then he'd have a listing, right? So there's always something that he could do with it. But a lot of times realtors get stuck in the mindset of got to find a listing, right? And if that's the only tool in the tool belt, you might be leaving a lot on the table that you could have potentially done to either make more money or build that future wealth.
Yes. And a lot of agents, it's really funny. Maybe this isn't a great analogy, but I think I in the past I've compared real estate agents to to doctors, in the sense that, there's eye doctors, there's feet doctors, there's heart doctors, and that's realtors, man. There's farm and ranch people, there's traditional, there's commercial folks. They all specialize in their own little niche. But if you can't understand two basic things, one is how to really put a deal together, and two, to figure out the best disposition for that deal, then you are truly leaving a lot of money on the table, because you become a one-trick pony, right? Like you're saying. So I always look at real estate like playing a game of Texas Hold'em. I don't know if you play or you don't, but in Texas Hold'em, everybody gets two cards dealt face down, and you look at your whole cards, and from there, based off of what comes out on the flop, it can tell you, should I bet? Should I check? Should I fold? Should I, it's gonna, and that's real estate. You gotta figure out, is this a wholesale deal? Is this a listing? Is this a flip? What's the best disposition for this property? But if you only have realtor goggles on and you only see the listing, then that's all that you're gonna look for, and that's all you're ever gonna find is
exactly.
But you also have to build those relationships. You got to find buyers. You got to find, and the interesting thing is this: a lot of people focus on acquisitions, especially in real estate. They focus, in wholesaling, they focus a lot on acquisitions. I got to find the seller. I got to find the seller. I got to find the seller. I got to find this house because I got to get a listing, et cetera, et cetera. But really, at least in the investing world, if you focus on finding buyers, the actual buyers, not other wholesalers, but actual buyers, those become your future partners. Those become your future private money lenders. Those become your future end buyers for wholesale deals. They also become your future clients for listings. And it's because when you're dealing with a seller, you might list one house for them, maybe two, maybe three over a lifetime, and maybe they'll refer you to their friends and stuff. But when you find a buyer, an actual buyer, an investor buyer, you can sell 10 houses to them in a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's just a very interesting. A lot of people skip right over that.
I think I heard the statistic from are you familiar with HomeBot?
No.
HomeBot.com is a really good kind of like a CRM, but it's like a client management tool. Yeah. So you input your clients into there. They get emails every month about like the value of their home, what they could potentially do with equity and things of that nature. A couple of years ago, some of the data they put out was that on the mortgage broker side, the amount of transactions somebody will do in their lifetime on average is 7, right? It'd be like 2-3 purchases, a couple refis in there, and then they're done. Right. So if you're working with the first time home buyers, like, not a problem, right? There's a lot of them out there, and there's a new wave of first time home buyers all the time, but you're limiting yourself, because if you have 1 or 2 investors or people that are interested in some facet, right? It could be a buyer, it could be a wholesaler, something. That's multiple transactions every single year, right? And if you cultivate that relationship, always take care of them, that's the hand that's going to feed you when the first time home buyers are sitting on the sidelines thinking that the mortgage market or some market's going to crash, and I'll just wait till next year and keep kicking the can down the road, right? Yes. Like the investors are like, dude, if I can make 20%, I don't care what the interest rate is, right? It eats into my margin, but
yeah. And that actually brings up another good point that I like to harp on is building these relationships, because especially if you're early on in your real estate career, why it's so important to do right by people and build good relationships and build good rapport and build trust early on, and show people that you're the real deal, and that you're an asset to them. A buddy of mine who's over the years become one of my best friends, we started off the real estate game together, and we met each other. We started doing real estate independent first, and then we met each other because of real estate. And what happened was he used to sell wholesale properties to my brokerage, right, through me, and we started working like that together. And then I left that brokerage and I went independent, and we kept the relationship, and we did a couple of flips together. And then, we did some more wholesaling together. And then, it ended up being like, hey, well, you know what? You're working in the restaurant business. Why don't you let me keep building my portfolio and let me use some of your money as a private loan? And now you're making money on real estate through me. We already have the relationship, and I'm using your money and I'm churning it for you, making you interest, and I'm building a portfolio. So this guy ends up going from being somebody who I would just take wholesale properties from to becoming one of my best friends and becoming a private lender of mine. And now we do multiple deals. I'm closing on a deal with him tomorrow, as a matter of fact. you know and it's just one of those things that people really they look over. But if you treat people right, and you build that good relationship with them, that trust, that relationship can blossom into a big deal.
100%.
And you don't need, here's another thing, like, you don't need a lot of people to be successful. You just need the right people, and you're going to find those right people, and you're going to build that circle. And when you build that circle and you find those right people, there is no limit to the amount of success that all of y'all can see, because everybody is helping everybody eat, and it becomes reciprocal all the way around. And so that's what I encourage. Find good people and build those relationships with them. And not everybody is going to be a home run. Not every deal is going to be a home run. You got to take the L's with them and the wins with them, both sides, and just keep building and building and building. And over time, you will see success. You will see the fruits of your labor. But it does take time. It's not get rich quick. It's not some, I can make a $1 million assignment fee right now. And it's not that.
Yeah,
Again,
unless you find some $100 million deal and
yeah.
you find the end buyer for it. But again,
And
like
and
you
and
got to
again,
have the connections for that.
it's possible.
Hmm.
It is. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible, but is it probable?
No,
What's really probable is that you build good relationships with people, and then you hit home runs with them over time.
right.
You know?
100%, man.
So
Well,
now, quick question for both of you guys, somebody that's looking to get into real estate investments. How would you recommend them to find the right contractors? That's one of two questions that I have coming up. How do you find the right contractors? What kind of questions do you want to ask these people whenever you're in front of them to get to make sure that you get to somewhat know them? You're not going to know them like you would if you've known them for 10 years, but get a feel for them, because I've already encountered a situation and I've seen it posted all over Facebook, like, hey, I gave this contractor 15 grand. They never came back to complete the job, or they estimated that the repair would be 20 grand. Now I'm stuck 80 grand into the repairs. So somebody looking to get into real estate, first of all, obviously you want to get a recommended contractor by people that you really trust. But if that's not the case,
what do you
what
do?
kind of questions would be good to ask the person to try to get a feel for them?
I would say general rule of thumb is that even if you've worked with a contractor in the past or they come highly referred, that doesn't necessarily mean that on the next job that you do with them or the first job that you do with them, that it's going to go 5 stars, right? It may, right? And the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, right? So if they come highly recommended by someone else, then you're off to the right start there. I would start with if you know flippers, if you know people that are doing projects, they had a great experience, leverage that, right? My advice, because my father was not a general contractor. I think he had his GC license actually, but he primarily installed kitchens. So I grew up installing kitchens, doing high-end finish work and woodworking and whatnot, and grew up in that environment. And I can tell you offhand, there's 3 things that you can look for when hiring a contractor, okay? Timeliness, quality of work, and price. Now you can pick 2 out of 3. You're not, if you get high quality, you're going to pay for it, right? If you get somebody that's giving you a bit of a discount, you're probably not going to get the best work, right? So I value timeliness and quality, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more in price personally. So when I'm interviewing a contractor, right, and I usually, even if it's one project, I'll get at least 3 quotes. I'll get them out there. I'll walk the property with them. I've got a baseline knowledge just from being in construction. So I know enough not to get screwed over. Let's put it that way. I don't have my contractor's license, but I can leverage their knowledge with mine. I'll walk it with them, make sure that they know what they're talking about. Are they giving me recommendations on the work that I'm proposing, or are they just an order taker? Right? Because I want to work with somebody that might take my ideas and make it blossom into something else that I didn't even think of, right? I'm not the contractor here. They are. They should be giving me the ideas and the good stuff. So that's one thing. And then once I get those, well, actually, the people that actually respond, right? Am I calling them, leaving a message, and then it's 3 days before I get a call back? If I get a call back, if I'm chasing them down at the beginning, what does that tell me about how the process is going to go 3 months in, right? When I'm waiting for them to finish. So make sure that it's somebody that's, if you value timeliness, make sure that they're being timely upfront. And then the same thing with the bid, right? How long is it going to take you to put these numbers together? If they say a couple days, great. If they say the weekend, great. I'm expecting it, on Monday, Tuesday, if that's what they tell me, right? Obviously things come up, but hey, again, how they perform now, how some people do some things is typically how they do most things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, from that point, if I get the bids back, I might be put on a sales hat and say, hey, I really want to work with you. This guy gave me a quote that was a couple grand less, but if you can match that, I'd love to move forward with you, right? And sometimes I might not have to do that if they're just giving me a great deal and they come highly referred. They have great reviews online, like their work speaks for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks for itself, right? But to me, that's what I look for. That's how I vet contractors. And even then, depending on the size of your deal, you're going to have issues come up that you didn't know about, or you might have a change order which changes things, changes price. So set the right expectations, but also know that if you change things are going to change on your bottom line and on your dollar cost as well. Other than that, the other biggest piece of advice I always give: never ever pay a contractor in full upfront, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, as you lose all leverage, right? What incentive do they have to go out and finish your job?
They don't.
If you've already paid them everything. They're going to need money along the way in order to make purchases on your behalf, right? Buy your cabinets, buy your flooring, buy all this stuff, which they get at a discount for being a contractor. So you should buy it through them. But man, do not pay them everything, or else it's going to be
Make the bulk of what you're going to pay them at the end.
Yes.
The bulk of what you're going to pay them, make it at the end of the deal.
At least 50%.
Yeah, make it at the end of the deal. Give them just enough to pay their guys and to buy the material or whatever. Usually what I do is I don't even so I have a Home Depot card with an insane amount of credit on it, and I get discounts, and I'm gold member, commercial revolving line, so I've got that figured out already. And I will just say, just tell me what your price is for the labor. And so and I got to go after this because it's already 12 o'clock, but I will finish and answer your question like this. Your question was, for somebody who doesn't know contractors and who's just getting started, how can they vet? How can they get in and know that they're going to get a solid contractor? Well, everything that Alex said is definitely true. About not paying them all up front, and if you have a baseline of knowledge like he does, that's great. Obviously, if you can get a recommendation from somebody, or you can see a portfolio of work, or you see them on Facebook and you see that they're active on Facebook, and you see their history, and you haven't seen people blackballing them, all of those are little telltale signs that they're probably doing something right, and they should at least be looked at. But one of the other big things that I used to do when I was starting off and I was looking to find not necessarily just GCs, but to find the people that actually do the work, I would go to job sites. I would actually go to a job site and go, because there's no line there. You're going to see exactly what they're doing. You're going to see if they're jacking around, drinking beer on the job. You're going to see if there's people in there hustling, putting up the sheetrock. You're going to see all the trades doing what they need to do or not. And if you go to a job site and you can more or less tell if somebody's doing what they should be doing and see, what's going on, there's a pretty good chance that they know what they're doing and that they're actively working and probably actively looking for more work. So you should go have a conversation with the head guy over there or get a business card from them or something. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to pull them off their job that they're doing at the time, because they are busy, but at least being able to get some contact information from them, so that way later on you can give them a call and say, hey, this is Santiago. I went to your house at 123 Main Street that y'all were working on, and I have a couple of projects that I'd be interested in getting a bid on. Can you make some time to come check out my project? And now you know that they're an actual contractor, that they're the actual people doing the work, and you actually get a firsthand view of what kind of work that they're doing. All of that in person by actually going to the job site and seeing what's going on. So that's a good little tip for somebody who doesn't have the network of contractors already, is just to go look at them, go look and see what they're doing.
That's a great point. Or even, showing up at Home Depot at 5 a.m. Like the guys that are getting after it are the ones that are actually there buying with stuff that they need first thing in the morning. You might park in the contractor parking and see who pulls up.
Absolutely. Alex, Santiago, I gotta run. I'm on my way to my next Zoom appointment, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I had a great time. I love sharing knowledge and I love gaining knowledge. So I appreciate it. And everybody for being on the Zoom. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ray.
We appreciate it.
All right. Y'all take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, so that was the first question regarding into the BRRRRs, right? You're buying a house to flip. Your first thing's gonna look for a contractor, somebody that can give you a bid, somebody that can give you an estimate on these repairs. Secondly, okay, you decide that this is something that you want to hold, you want to rent it long term. Do you go to a property management team? What are you looking for in a property management team? Because I know personally as a real estate agent, that maybe Jennifer or Trinice can vouch for this. When helping some clients that are looking for leases, and I have the client here, like, I want this house. Sometimes it's impossible to get a hold of a property management team. It's like they have their process to rent that property. It's in shambles. Nobody answers. There's no computer friendly application. They're still old school. They still want you to download the track application, take it in person with the cashier's check, but there's some questions and they're not responding. So if rental's the path that you choose to go with your property, are you going with the property management team, or are you knocking that door monthly asking for your rental money? How would you recommend that?
I like to start with the end in mind with just about anything I do. So, the Airbnbs that I have, when it was the first one, I was like, I want to have 10 of these things, and I sure as hell don't want to be taking time out of my day to, talk to good guests or bad guests or filter them or deal with tenant guest issues or any of that stuff, right? So even when it was the first property, I sought out property management. And it was the same vetting process, right? Like, let me get some referrals. Let me talk to these guys. Are they responsive to my texts? Because if they're not responsive to my texts, what do you think they're going to be to my guests?
Sure.
Right? Not responsive at all. Are they, in Airbnb, you kind of get a cheat code because you can see if they're a super host or not. Only like 10% of hosts are actually super hosts. So like I can already see, is this guy on his game, or is he just trying to collect a bunch of money and not do a whole lot? Right. So that's a big leg up in the long-term rental market. I would say it's nearly the same. You don't have the same cheat codes in the sense of like super hosts or things of that nature, but you can certainly call up an agency. Do you get a call back? Are they responsive to you? Right? Because that's going to give you an insight as to whether they're responsive to the tenants of your properties. Right? Is that issue going to get addressed immediately? Is it, automated? Get a look into their systems. How many properties do they manage? you know, how do they go about streamlining that process, and you know, how many employees do they have to manage each property, so on and so forth. Personally, I don't think it's a bad idea if you're getting started and you only have one rental to try doing that process yourself, right? Do a soft check on credit, take a look and see, are they paying their bills on time, right? They don't need to be mortgage ready in that sense, but are they at least, you know, X, set your standards of like, I want somebody with X FICO or 620, 680, whatever it may be. You know, do they have a good work history, or they have a solid job? Are they making 2 times the rent, 5 times the rent, or 10 times the rent, right? Depends on your property, right? And from there, you know, set the right expectations. There was a story I heard one time of a guy who, even though it was his property, anytime he dealt with tenants, he spoke as if it wasn't his property, so that they didn't feel like they could get one over on the owner, right? They're like, oh, I'm talking to the property manager here, right? And there was always, he could always defer responsibility or decisions to the owner, right? Even though they're speaking to the owner. So I think that's a good strategy. And honestly, you know, a long-term lease, it's not that big of a deal. There's payment portals. I don't know of any offhand, but there's ways where you can give them an app. They can log in and pay their rent every month, right? It sends them reminders, sends them emails, so that you're not the one following up and doing any of that. I would personally, if I would check in on them at least every 6 months to do a walk of the property, make sure it's not in total disrepair. I would set up some sort of incentive program for them to report damages or leaks or like major issues to me, so that, you know, I don't come in 6 months later and find that a small leak is now a big issue, right?
Yeah.
So that would be, again, I don't think there's a wrong answer there. Personally, if you're busy enough in your own day to day, it may not be a good idea to take more on that's going to distract you from the thing that you do really well. So vetting the right property manager, bringing them on, and depending on what they do, right? If you have one property with them, they might charge you as much as 10%. I would say like 7 to 10 on a long-term lease. Property manager is what I would allocate for. If you have multiple properties with the same property manager, it might be more closer to the 7%, right? Because you're doing more business through them. But yeah, I like the idea of doing that with a property manager, so that way you can stay doing what you're doing, and you're not getting the 2 a.m. phone calls that, hey, the toilet's broken. Like,
of course, yeah. You kind of let somebody deal with that part of it, and I'm sure they have their insurances, their legalities. They're probably more prepared to respond to any big situation that might come up, rather than yourself, because you just did that as an investment, as a hobby, as an extra. So you're probably not prepared to deal with the problems either, right? So you don't know how to approach them. Lastly, maybe some subject that we can close out this Zoom meeting with would be the conversation that started all this. How do DSCR loans work? How legit are they? That 0 down, 0 income, you just make money based off of the, what's it called, the projected income that the property is going to bring. Who determines the projected income, and how do you set that in place?
Perfect. So no DSCR loan is 0 down, right? It's an investor loan. Investor loans are minimum 20% down. I would say about a year ago, maybe a year and a half, when the money was just free flowing, there were some investor products with 15 down, right? The guidelines got a little bit looser there, but now everything's tightening up. So, you know, you're seeing some lenders that are 25 minimum. Most are still 20 though. Okay. I always say 20% is your entry point. 25, it gets you a little bit better pricing. Okay, so if you can do 25, it might be worth looking at, and it just depends on the situation as to whether or not it's worth it. So the way a DSCR loan works is it does not look at your personal income whatsoever. Okay, what it looks at is the current rents of the property. There's three things it could do. a current lease agreement, okay? It can use Airbnb income depending on how long it's been an Airbnb. So you need to show a 12-month rental history from Airbnb. Can't be 11, can't be 10. Got to have a 12-month payout history from Airbnb, and they'll take the average of those total payouts as your income. Okay. And then the last way is if it's not rented, it's not Airbnb'd, they'll do market rents. Market rents are determined by the appraiser. So when a lender orders the appraisal, we order an additional report to determine market rents. So they'll take a look at comparable properties that are currently rented. What are they renting for? And they'll determine the market rents that way. Okay. So the majority of DSCR loans will take whatever income path that I just discussed, one of those three, and they'll say, cool, the rents are $2,000 a month. Therefore, your mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, association dues, all in, cannot be more than $2,000. So if it's $2,000 and $2,000, that's considered a 1-to-1 ratio. Make sense?
Okay.
Now,
so it doesn't have to be profitable. You just have to break even with your payment.
Yes. Now,
Okay.
ideally, as an investor, you want there to be profit, right?
Of course.
You know, even as a lender, like I want to make money just as much as anybody wants to make money on a deal, but I would heavily advise them, like you might want to take out less or put down more money so that way you have room for profit, right? And I'm not talking $100, because if they're not factoring in things like CapEx, maintenance, repairs, things like that, they're not factoring in property management, and they might be self-managing, right? And vacancy, then I'm setting them up for failure at the end of the day. I'm giving them a liability and not an asset, right?
Sure.
So that's a different conversation. So in essence, that's the bare minimum that they want to see is a 1-to-1 ratio. If it's better, like let's say you're getting $2,400 a month in rent and $2,000 on your payment, that's a 1.2-to-1 ratio.
Right.
And typically that's where some of them will give you a price incentive. They'll give you a better interest rate, lower fees, because it's a better deal, right? The opposite's also true. I've got a lender they have a less than 1 ratio where, you know, she was telling me they funded a deal where it was 0.3 on one deal. So like $300 a month in income and $1,000 in rents. And, you know, that's where you'll take a pricing hit. The fees are a little bit more. And the reason why someone might do that is, let's say they are planning on Airbnb-ing the property, but they don't have a history of it. And it's in an area where market rents are far less than what they need the mortgage to be, right? So they're sitting there saying like, well, I know I'm going to make $4,000 a month Airbnb in this home. So I don't care if it's, you know, the market rents are $1,000 and my mortgage is $2,000. I've still got a nice profit margin in there.
Okay. It's building equity, essentially. That's where you see it, right?
Built in what sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, you say that the rental is $1,000, but the mortgage is $2,000.
Right.
So you're covering up that extra $1,000, right? Essentially, it's coming out of pocket, but that's for an investor that sees the equity in the property increasing with half of your money coming out of your pocket, and the property value is probably going to be more after that year lease is over or whenever you're ready to flip it.
Yes, but you know, that's not if that was the strategy, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd say pass on this, dude. Like if it's not cash flowing, like nobody's.
You shouldn't even be having a conversation about investments.
No, like nobody's buying rentals knowing that they're losing money on a monthly basis, right? Like that's not a thing. It's in the sense where, you know, they're going to Airbnb it. They know based off AirDNA data or Airbnb data in the area, they can get $4,000 a month, right? But they don't have the history of renting that property out on Airbnb yet.
Surely.
Right. So, but market rents for what a long-term lease would be is by the appraiser would be $1,000. So they're like, hey, I don't care what the market rents are there. I'm going to be Airbnb in this property. It's going to bring in $4,000 a month. So I'm okay with a $2,000 mortgage. Just get me a loan where I can get 75%, 80% of my money.
So you're saying DSCR loans, they're true.
Mhm.
I have 20% down, and I can call you and I'm like, hey, Alex, you know what? This property next to me is for sale. I want to buy it as an investment property. Here's my 20% down. You will not go based off of my income. You will never ask for my bank statements, and it's not based off my credit. It's going to be 100% entirely on the profitability of the property, where there has to be 12 months of history, either rentals or Airbnbs. Otherwise, there's going to be an appraisal that's going to set that number, and it's not going to be off of the Zestimate, right? Or
Couple of things. So the 12-month thing is only in effect for Airbnb income. Got to have the history. Okay. If you're going to do a long-term lease, then they just need to see the signed lease agreement, right?
The lease agreement that's on the property already.
Right. It might be on the property. It might be coming up in a month, right? You've got the tenant, they're checking in a month after you close, right? So like they could use that. They could go off of that. Or again, if you don't have any of that, the market rents by the appraiser. So the loan is based, the income portion of it, the ability to repay on that loan is based upon the income of the property, not your personal income. Okay.
Right.
It is still personally guaranteed. So meaning it is based on your personal credit. They're going to check your credit and make sure that you're not a 500, 400 credit score. I think the minimum that I've seen is like 620, 640, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on the lender. It is, you can title it in an LLC. That's an advantage. Right?
Okay.
So typically, if it's a conventional loan, you got to title it in your personal name and then quit claim the property to the LLC afterwards, right? So there's a trail history there of where it came from. With a DSCR loan, you can title it directly into an LLC at closing, which is nice. But they also want to see assets, right? They need to know where the money is coming from that you're using for down payment. So that might be personal bank statements. That might be business bank statements if it's being titled in an LLC, and they would want to make sure that you're an owner of that LLC via the operating agreement of the LLC, some other corporate documentation, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. They still have to vet where the money's coming from. With a DSCR loan, the money does have to be seasoned, right? Not sourced and seasoned. Sourced meaning, hey, here's the bank statement. Seasoned meaning we need 2 months bank statements to make sure that it's been in that account for at least 60 days.
Okay. That makes sense. So that was the DSCR loans. We've talked about BRRR. We've covered BRRR. I think that a lot of things that the people missed out, that they really miss on when they come to the investment, is the expense that's going to come with it, the contractors that are going to come with it, the property management expenses that are going to come with it, the tax rates that are going to come when selling the property and flipping. And that's the things that you can't explain on a 15, 30-second video on TikTok, right? Those are the things that they're not hearing. So it's great that we had this meeting. And again, these are conversations that we'll probably have after the call. Now, one of the things that I would like to ask you, is that background a digital background, or is it really your house? Because it's beautiful.
That's my office, man.
Okay. So you play the piano and all that?
I was learning. I've got like 2 really easy songs down. That's it. But the ukuleles, I can play a couple songs. I played guitar for like 18 years on and off. I'm no virtuoso by any means, but it was a love of mine, and I've just kept it up. But yeah, the couch. It's funny. That was from an Airbnb that I just sold back in January, and one of the stipulations was that I get the couch.
No way. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. The funny story, ever since I've been 4 years old or 3 years old, the only song that I can play on any instrument is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So in case you ever need some lessons for that, I can teach you.
You'll have to school me.
Hey guys, thank you very much, Shanice and Jennifer, for showing up for this meeting. Let's organize the next one, man. I think that these meetings are productive. They're self-teaching. I mean, I learned a lot from this. I know that I talked to you about myself getting into real estate investments. You've covered a lot of the bases that I've been wanting to learn. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And you're gonna hear from me after this call. So anything that you have for us before we disconnect, maybe again, this call's recorded. It's being streamed currently on Facebook, on YouTube, and it's gonna stay there way after our time. So before we end this call, maybe you want to promote your lending services. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what type of loans, and then we'll finish it. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah, as far as the lending side goes, man, I've been doing loans for 8 years. The conventional FHA VA is bread and butter, right? I've really enjoyed working with investors. They're doing the whole DSCR loans. I've been doing those for a couple of years. So if you have clients that need them, typically that's we could talk about, that's a whole nother Zoom on which clients and when to use a DSCR loan versus conventional for investment purchases. But there's a lot of lenders that say they have them. That doesn't mean that they do them, and that doesn't mean they know the lenders that can actually get them done, right? Beyond that, you know, I've got some hard money options. We've got some interesting alternatives to commercial, but that's really the only thing that I have to shop out at this point is actual true blue commercial loans, and I've got a couple referral partners for that as well. So if you need anything, Alex at coastalpacificlending.com, and you can find me on the interwebs as well, YouTube, Alex Luzadre, and we'll be posting this on there as well. Be sure to tag Santiago, and yeah, man, I'd be happy to do these whenever you want to do the next one. Just let me know.
VA loans next time, maybe. More of our veterans need to be educated in regards to their VA benefits. So that'll be a great call for next time. But yeah, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Alex, it was a pleasure having you. Finally getting to meet you. Whether it was to camera, it sucks to see that you're better looking than I am, but it is what it is. Thank you very much for being here today, man. Take care. I'll catch up later.
All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.